Welcome to another one of our interview segments leading into the federal election here on The Breakdown. And today we're very fortunate to have with us Joseph Alexander, who's running in Calgary Skyview, with the Christian Heritage Party.
Yes, sir.
How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well.
Excellent.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for being willing to take the time and come out and sit in our little desks.
Thank you.
So to start with, can you tell me what it is that made you decide to run for office? Well, before we even do that, actually, to start with, can you tell me a little bit about you? What's your story?
My name is Joseph Alexander. I came here in 1972.
Okay.
And from there on, that I really like this nation, because this nation has the opportunity for anyone. Because I came here with the $7 in my pocket.
Okay.
And I had a business. Finally, that well-established business. All my children grew up here, and they are all well settled. And even one of my son is a lawyer.
Okay.
And all my children are well established. And my business also, that it was a very, very practical type business. It was a auto body shop that I have done well in that business. I know how the small businesses should work, and I was a pastor of a church,
Okay.
which I was the founder of that church, and we have many nations in it, about 16 nations.
Wow.
In our church that we worship together. So I'm really involved with the different ethnic groups, and I know the problems that we are facing today's society, especially, when I came here, I have seen a country just like heaven, and these days the country is losing some of its, I would say, the principles and the values.
Can you give me an example of what you're talking about?
There are things that, for example, that we believe as Christian Heritage Party,
Okay.
we are very strong in the area of life, family, and freedom.
Okay.
The life is very important thing that God has given that life. So we believe that from the time of conception to the time of natural death, nobody has the right to take that life away.
Under any circumstances.
Under any circumstance.
So I think we're talking about abortion now, so we'll just jump right into it. That's certainly an issue that we have had. We've seen a lot of conversation on the federal level.
Exactly.
So just to clarify the point, when you say under no circumstances, there's no circumstances that would be acceptable.
Exactly.
So if there was, and there are certainly, this happens, where the fetus or the embryo was not viable, it wasn't going to be able to be carried to term, but if the mother did try to carry it to term, she could die. That wouldn't be an exception where your party would support
Once
her.
the baby is died in the womb, then there is always the baby has to come out, but doesn't mean that the life has to take away from that baby.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even if it puts the mother's life at risk.
Who is saying that risk? There are a lot of cases that the doctors say it's a risk, but later on those babies are coming out like healthy babies. I have heard from many testimonies
Okay.
from people that their mothers wanted to abort that baby, but those babies are very healthy. So how a doctor, maybe one doctor may say this child may be going to born with a brain dead or any kind of other severe problem.
Sure.
But another doctor may not agree with that. So we are talking about the life. Life belongs to God.
So where is the line for the Christian Heritage Party then in regards to, you spoke about the importance of freedom. Where is the line in regards to a woman's freedom to express her own body autonomy? Where does that body autonomy end?
everybody has their freedom of choice,
Okay.
but not the freedom of choice on a life. The unborn child has no voice. It cannot talk to anybody.
Okay.
There are so many people on the face of the earth. We concerned about, like a lot of refugees and everybody. But what we are saying, preserve that baby. That baby should be adopted faster than abortion. Abortion is not an avenue,
Okay.
for people's choice.
Where does what I'm interested in getting your perspective on is the piece of the body autonomy part. So if a life can be saved,
Yeah.
that's the overriding factor. Would your party consider? Could you see your party consider endorsing something like mandatory organ donation? So if I'm a match for somebody in my family who is going to die without a chunk of my liver or my
Yeah,
kidney,
yeah.
should the government be able to say, if you don't give him your liver, he's going to die, therefore we're going to come and take your liver?
It's perfectly a good question. That that's that the party hasn't ever. I don't think we have discussed on that matter.
Okay.
But I could always talk to my leader, and what would be in that case. how
What
we
would your
could-
sense, just based on the party principles that you're aware of, do you think that's something that the
See-
party would support, or?
My party should take any decision as the majority of the party members.
Okay.
So it has to be discussed. if
Let
it
me
is
let me let me rephrase the question then. If your party, if a member of your party or a member of another party perhaps was to put forward a bill in Parliament and you were elected as an MP, saying that if somebody was a suitable donor match for somebody else who desperately needed an organ and their life wouldn't be ended by them having that organ or a part of that organ taken, would you vote for a bill like that?
But we might consider that one personally.
You specifically.
I personally might consider that one as an option.
Okay.
But then again, the life is not in the hand of any human beings. But if it is, the life is gone, immediately that organ could be donated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
for your candor on that one. I'll just work my way down the list in
Yeah,
your
yeah,
thing here.
okay.
So you have here on your brochure that you would restore traditional marriage. Can you tell me what that means?
Restore means that a traditional marriage. Sorry, that can I turn it off? The traditional marriage is between a man and a woman.
Okay.
According to our belief system, that we believe the marriage is ordained by God Himself.
Okay.
And when God created man, He created a woman. He didn't create two men or two women, because according to God's plan and traditional way, that the family, a man and a woman, could be always reproduced, and they could have a wonderful, wonderful family life to replenish on the earth.
Okay.
Yeah.
A couple of questions on that then. So the first piece of it is if you believe in individual freedom as long as it's not taking a life. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
first statement. Yeah.
If that's a principle that you believe in, do you believe that there should be any separation of church and state in regards to the governing of a multicultural, multi-religious country?
Can you repeat that question
Sure.
again?
So Canada is a multicultural country.
Yes.
It's made up of people who have come from all over the world, and some people who were here first. They got the short end of the stick.
Yeah.
But because of that, there are many, many different cultures. There's many, many different faiths that make up the Canadian mosaic.
Yes.
Often those faiths have differing or potentially conflicting approaches to a variety of issues. Do you believe that there should be a separation between the church or a given church and government responsibility, or should the church dictate the role of government?
I believe that church is always part of the government,
Okay.
part of the society.
Who gets to
I
decide?
believe, for example, families are churches. Individuals become families. Families become churches. You know, that those churches and the society become a government.
Who gets to decide which church gets to be the influencing church in government?
Church should have involvement in government,
Okay.
not church influence government on, like, church cannot impose their ideology on government.
Okay.
But church and government works together. This is the way I believe.
If you're going, I guess what I'm trying to sort out is, if you're going with the traditional Judeo-Christian definition of marriage,
Yes.
then that's picking one particular faith basis under which to build a legal framework. And there are certainly other faiths. I mean, First Nations have ever acknowledged the concept of two-spirited individuals. That's something that First Nations never really struggled with in a lot of areas. Why should a voter want to say that it's the Judeo-Christian faith model that should inform laws such as marriage, as opposed to a First Nations model, or as an Islamic model, or pick a faith?
I believe that every religion teaches the definition of marriage is between a man and a woman.
Every religion?
I believe every religion
Okay.
believes that system. According to my understanding, no religion teaches, not any major religion teaches, marriage between a man and a man, or a woman and a woman is going to be a family.
Okay. Would you argue, there are some that would say that agnostics or atheists, while they don't practice a specific faith, they do have a belief system. And while obviously that belief system would be in conflict with somebody who holds a religious faith, why is their worldview secondary on a legal framework?
First of all, I don't believe that agnostics or atheists are religion. They are
No, I'm not saying that they're a religion, but they have a worldview. So
they have a view.
Yeah.
We respect those views. There's no doubt about it.
Okay.
We
so
respect everyone's view.
to the atheists who believe that a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, or whatever combination should be
If
able to
they
get
believe
married.
it, they could practice it. We don't really go against it.
Okay.
But we want to preserve the traditional marriage, the definition of marriage between a man and a woman. That's the only thing that we are trying to preserve it, continue. That we don't want the gays or the lesbians, that movement coming and impose their belief on your system, or your churches, or your school system. That's
Okay.
all we are.
Do you think that there's room within a legal framework for there to be a mechanism where you're the pastor of a church? Have you ever married anyone?
Yes.
Okay.
I have
So,
married.
do you think that there's a legal framework where you could have the legal authority to choose who you, as a religious ceremony, wanted to marry, but that there would be still a legal framework for whatever combination of couple to enjoy the same legal protections and the same legal benefits that marriage affords a lot of couples in this country?
Would you repeat that question again? Sorry. About
Sure.
that.
No. If what you're trying to do within your faith is preserve your right to say, this is what I believe.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's a lot of people who would have a tremendous problem with that. What I'm curious is, do you see that there's the framework within parliamentary law to say, if you only want to marry people as a pastor,
Yeah.
that you want to marry. You don't believe that you should be forced to marry people that are not members of your church or whatever the case may be. That's a decision that you should be allowed to make. But at the same time, if there's two gay gentlemen who want to get married because they want to be able to have a house together and they want to be able to enjoy the tax rights together and they want to be able to have the legal affordments that marriage provides people, from separate from a belief base, but from just a tax base, or they just want to make a public declaration of their commitment to each other. Is there room for those two things to coexist, or does the Christian Heritage Party just say, nope, you can only be married if you're a man and a woman?
You are exactly right.
Okay.
The Christian Heritage Party goes according to the Word of God.
Okay.
The Bible is their guidelines.
Okay.
And according to Bible, homosexual practice is sin. And when people are living in sin and we don't marry them, but at the same time, we don't hate them.
Okay.
We love them. No matter what they are, we love them as they are. We have no difference between any human beings. That after all, if they want to continue their practices, they could always continue with their practices. But in a church that we are not allowed because of the Word of God doesn't agree with that kind of lifestyle, that a pastor should marry them. So we never will be able to accept that kind of marriage in our churches.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's where the separation of church and state part, I think, is important, because for a government of a multicultural, pluralistic society to choose one belief system, and that's the belief system on the basis of which all citizens are governed by, where it clashes for me, I suppose, a little bit is if you're going to say free will as a tenet, then I think you have to let people make the choices.
First of all, my question, why do they have to get married in a church?
I'm not saying that they do.
There are so many other ways to get
Absolutely.
married if they want
But
to.
that's why I was asking.
See, that means they want to impose their ideology on the Christian churches.
But that's why I was trying to clarify. If somebody wants to get married,
No.
not in a church.
Not in a church. Not in our churches.
Yeah, but if somebody wanted to get married in a church and have that marriage recognized under law, not under faith, but
sure,
under law,
sure.
that would be something that the
that's
Christian
up to
Heritage-
them. That's
Okay.
up to the church, the denomination which they represent. But
If they just want to do it with like a justice of the peace, though.
but they could do that.
Okay.
But yeah, they could
So
do.
you would still allow for
Oh,
marriage?
we have nothing against that idea.
Okay.
That how they want to get married.
Okay.
But we are not against it. But we don't want them to come to the church and say, look, we want to get married here. So we don't want that kind of system imposed on pastors or churches.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if there was, when we talk about restoring traditional marriage,
Yeah.
the Christian Heritage Party wouldn't negate the legal opportunity for a gay couple to get married by a justice of the peace then?
Well, you know, the problem that all these things are coming up these days. You know, I came here 47 years ago, but we didn't have any problem for gay couple or anybody.
Oh, I think
They were always existed.
I think that the gay folks would probably be quite
they-
happy to say 40 years ago they weren't having a very good time.
they were existed even according to the word of Bible. In the time of Sodom and Gomorrah,
Yeah.
they were existed.
40
Even
years
the-
ago it was criminal in this
That is not 40 years ago. That was about 35 years ago. They were existed.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say, they were always existed. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden they are coming on the Christians and saying, you have to accept us.
Oh, yeah.
We have nothing against them. We, as I said before, we love them.
Okay.
You know, we don't love the practice they do. That's all. We
Okay.
love as a person.
So to get back to my question,
Yeah.
would the Christian Heritage Party still allow a judicial framework for a gay couple to get married as a legal construct, completely absent of a church?
Well, the church never get involved in that thing. No, the
I'm
Christian.
not asking about the church. I'm
The
asking about your
church
political
or
party.
even the Christian Heritage Party will not get involved in it.
Okay, so you
Because
won't.
it is not in their agenda.
So you wouldn't take that away.
Yeah, people may have all kinds of ideologies.
Okay.
There are people getting married to animals, having sexual relations. But hey, it's all up to the individuals in their bedrooms or wherever they are. But in the community that is been accepting as a normal procedure,
Yeah.
we have nothing against it.
Okay, so you wouldn't outlaw gay marriage then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Assisted suicide. We're working our way down the list. You brought the list, not me. So, define assisted suicide for me.
I'm sorry?
Can you tell me what your definition of assisted suicide would be?
One, that also the same way the life.
Okay.
Life cannot be taken away by, because people could justify anything that this is my situation.
Okay.
So maybe somebody has to help me to take my life away.
Okay.
But we rather like to preserve that person's life with a proper care. Proper care means how we could avoid, how we could help that person. We have to bring up certain treatment procedures, certain loving way that how we could help that person,
Okay.
that they could sustain their life.
Is there what would be? I mean, when we're talking about assisted suicide in Canada under the current legislation, my understanding of it is that it's not an easy thing to obtain when we're talking about the medical assistance in dying, and it's typically reserved for the most extreme of cases where somebody has reached a point in their disease pathology where there's no quality of life or little to no quality of life under any circumstances. I have certainly in my own experience crossed paths with people who are at the end stage of a particularly aggressive form of cancer. And their existence is largely defined by pain. There's no question that they only have a week, 2 weeks left to live. And under the previous legislation, the best that was allowable was for that person to not have their feeding tube filled. So is there any delineation into at what point does the intervention or the lack of intervention effectively become assisted suicide? And where the next part of that question is if life has to be preserved at all costs, would you, if somebody had decided that they wanted to die or they wanted to expedite the process that they were inevitably experiencing, would you support force feeding them?
We coming back to the same question again about life. I really sympathetic to people, those who are going through that condition.
Okay.
Our party is very, very concerned about the suffering that people have to go through. It is unfortunate in many situations that how much people are suffering, going through pain and difficulties and emotional and the physical issues that they've been going through. But to me, as a person, that I believe in the preservance of life, no matter what happens. But the only reason that we are against it, personally, I would say, where do we put the guidelines on it, the boundary?
Okay.
Yeah, and see, one person say, I don't have any intention to live. Just, I want to die. just
Yeah.
like any
No,
suicide.
I don't think that
Yeah.
somebody should be able to access medical assistance and die
Yeah,
if they had a
but-
bad Tuesday.
But where do we put that guidelines? I mean, guidelines as well as the boundary.
Okay.
This person cannot continue to live.
Okay.
See, this is a problem, that some are in extreme cases. Some may end their life without maybe small reason.
Okay.
So it's better that we don't get into that guidelines how someone could end his life or someone could assist him to die.
Okay.
Yeah.
Going back to that question of autonomy and individual autonomy then, if there was an individual who was in extremis, and if there was a medical professional who had conversations with that person, and that person made it clear when it gets to the point that I can't use words anymore, I'm in intolerable pain, please do what you can to expedite the process. And if that person as a medical professional was comfortable with that, you still believe that it's the role of the government to supersede those two people's wishes?
We still don't believe in that one. Taking life away, it's not in our agenda.
Okay.
It's not in our belief system.
Okay.
No matter what the situation is.
Okay. Balancing the budget. I love that one. How are you going to do it?
I think government fails to, for all these years, they fail to balance budget.
Clearly.
Canada is a great country. It has a lot of resources, but those who are in the high level, that they don't properly doing the mathematics, how to, as I said, that Canada has a lot of resources that we could always have surplus. But if we have poor management in the government's levels, that we never going to accomplish it.
Okay.
This is just as I said before, there are a lot of broken promises they make it. Sometimes to fulfill that promises, they throw the money in unwanted areas. Just like we never had GST, for example, years back.
Yeah.
Because of more expenses. Just like in your own home, that if your mom or dad, if they are not spending according to what they are bringing into the house, you can never survive.
Yeah.
So we have a good economist that is been advising us with the CHP party that this nation could be move with balanced budgets.
How would you achieve that?
I'm not an economist, but
Okay.
at the same time, personally, we deal with some of the best economists that their advice.
Okay.
And I cannot give you a perfect answer on it, but I am quite sure that today's government or the previous government never was able to do this properly, but always they go into more and more debt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I would love to, if you could provide, maybe get some details from the economists that you guys work with.
I could ask more about it.
Yeah, I'd love to know what the specifics are, because we certainly saw in the provincial election that the economy was probably the number one driving factor. And if the Christian Heritage Party does have specific steps as to how you would balance the budget, I'm sure that's something that people would like to know about. Free speech.
Freedom. Everyone, the foundation of humanity is based on freedom.
Okay.
It's better for one person to live one day free rather than living as a slave for the entire life.
Who defines, what definition of freedom are we using?
Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of culture, freedom in every areas, in your area of worship.
Okay.
And
so to go back to a couple of our previous topics,
yeah.
if we believe as freedom as an absolute,
Absolute, yeah.
then why would not a Christian Heritage Party government allow people the freedom, if they don't believe, for example, that life begins at conception? If that's not one of their beliefs, shouldn't they have the freedom to pursue that?
I don't believe that is a freedom.
So a
Freedom,
person's
freedom
ability,
means if anybody wants to do anything, that is not freedom.
okay,
If someone wants to end his life, that's not a freedom. That's destroying himself. And Christian Heritage Party believes that freedom is is very essential in a human life.
okay,
That means killing a baby or destroying a life doesn't mean that's a freedom.
okay. Where are the boundaries for freedom then in the Christian Heritage Party?
We believe that every culture, every nation comes into, as you said before, Canada is a mosaic,
Yes.
and every nation has a place here. Every nation must live here peacefully. After all, they are law-abiding citizens. This country also, the country only built up on principles and values, and people like you and me, we are the one that the foundation of this nation. So there is always guidelines under the government. We cannot. Freedom doesn't mean that this is my freedom.
Yeah.
Going and killing people, or blowing up, public. These are not freedom.
One of the definitions of freedom that I've always found is helpful is the idea that as long you can do or believe whatever you want,
Exactly.
as long as you're not imposing those beliefs on other people.
Exactly. That's what we believe.
Okay. So I'm curious how you, if that's what you believe, I'm
Yeah.
curious how you reconcile that with imposing some of the other beliefs on the entire population of Canada.
As I said, that we are not against any belief system.
Okay.
We believe that everyone has the right to function in this nation peacefully, and if my freedom doesn't really affect on somebody else's freedom, then it is okay. If
Okay.
my freedom is really destroying my neighbor, that freedom is not freedom.
Okay.
So it should be an helpful way, both sides.
Okay. Do you believe in free speech as an absolute?
Yes, I do believe.
Okay. So what would the Christian Heritage, I asked the People's Party of Canada question this, and their political stance is that there should be no such thing as hate speech.
Hate speech is not good.
Well, I agree it's not good, but should it be illegal?
Hate speech, freedom of speech. Anybody could speak what they want. That doesn't mean that it is, as I said before, that shouldn't affect on somebody else's belief system or somebody else's lifestyle. After all, if it doesn't, in a democratic society, it doesn't bother somebody else, it's all right.
But we've certainly seen in countries around the world, some of them perhaps south of the border, where the dialed up rhetoric and the use of, I would say, hate speech by elected officials has resulted in emboldening action, where people in positions of authority are able to use hate speech effectively, and that emboldens other people to commit actual crimes. And there's a strong documented correlation between hate speech is used as a tool to incite violence and violence following that.
Sure.
So would not the People's Party, Christian Heritage Party, would you continue with Canada's existing mandate to ban hate speech Or would you just say you can say whatever you want regardless of the consequences?
That is not freedom, saying whatever you want to.
Yeah.
That you are really hurting somebody by your words or your action.
Yeah.
That is not a freedom.
So would you maintain the legal framework
Sure,
where hate
legal
speech is a
framework
crime?
in a modern society, in a democratic society, that
Okay.
we should understand, especially those who are in a high level, like ministers
Yeah.
and all those politicians, government officers, and all these people have to know what to speak and whether it's going to affect or hurt somebody. Whatever that comes out of your mouth, sometimes your word is sometimes like a sharp sword.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Or it can,
we are
like I
against
said,
it.
my concerns with hate speech as an individual stem more from when people start to say things that cause other people to do that. So hate speech would still be a criminal code
Yes.
law. Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
Yes.
What are conscience rights?
Conscience that the human society is building upon on conscience.
Okay.
That you have a conscience. Doesn't matter what you do, it must be according to your conscience.
Okay.
The conscience has a great place in your personal life, in the society, in the government life, that the conscience must be clear,
Okay.
that we must walk in the integrity
Okay.
and honesty of our life.
So what does it mean to defend conscience rights?
Or to defend is that we have to educate people. But if our top level people are not honest or sincere,
Okay.
that this is just like in a family, that the father is not really walking
Okay.
with integrity. I think the children have nothing to learn from the father or the mother. So I believe the government also in that way, that the government should be clean
Okay.
and with a clear conscience, and each individual makes that government, each MPs or the MLAs, they are the one that is a foundation of any society, that then they don't have to be ashamed like the recent issues or something. We had to always be honest with what we did, what we speak, what we have sworn. Don't try to beat around the bush or bring under the carpet. That is always a conscience.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the interpretations that I've heard of conscience rights is the idea that if I believe that you're asking me to do something that is against my conscience, I should be able to say no.
Yes,
Okay.
of course.
Now, given the pluralistic society that we have here, there are certainly acts that would be against some people's conscience, but for other people it would be against their conscience to not do that thing. The easy example again, I'll go to the medical assisted in dying piece. There are certainly people who believe that their conscience dictates that to mitigate a person's suffering when there's a foregone conclusion as to what's going to happen to them, that is the moral thing they believe. How would a Christian Heritage Party government differentiate between your conscience rights as somebody who says I don't believe in medical assistance in dying, and the conscience rights of a physician who did?
You know, it's an excellent question. That we believe that the conscience is the most important thing.
Okay.
If somebody says, according to my conscience, what you are trying to tell me, I don't believe in it. That's exactly right. I believe Christian Heritage Body always supports that conscience matters.
Okay, so if a physician believed it was his moral obligation, per his conscience, to provide assisted suicide to somebody, how would the Christian Heritage Party respond to that?
Christian Heritage Party may not be able to take a decision on that particular area,
Okay.
but we will always put that in the public's hands
Okay.
to take a decision on that one.
Okay.
But we are a democratic society. Christian Heritage Party, if they come into power, they don't impose that ideology onto anybody unless it is democratically
So that would be like a
accepted.
referendum topic for
Yeah,
you guys
referendum,
then.
yeah.
Okay, perfect. Border protection. Do our borders need to be more protected than they currently are? And how would you do it if you do believe that they do?
I do believe that a proper screening needed in the borders.
Okay.
We don't really want to leave our borders wide open that anybody could walk in.
How are you
And-
going to stop that?
Proper screening,
Okay.
proper inquiry about the people's past and all these things.
Okay.
And those who are, drug traffickers and all those smugglers, that we don't want them to walk in.
How are,
Because-
I guess what my question is how are you going to, like, we're talking about the largest unprotected border in the world. And there's huge sections of the Canadian border where it's literally just a single wire that anybody can walk over or under if they so choose. Well, I can certainly appreciate the concerns in regard to higher levels of security checks for people who are going through established border entry points. Would the Christian Heritage Party change how the rest of the border is currently managed?
The Christian Heritage Party, no country can survive unless their borders are secure.
Okay.
No houses, if you don't have fence around your house is not protected. So every nation should have their proper hedge around the hedge.
Okay.
So
So, would you build a hedge?
what hedge means, I'm not talking making a wall or anything.
Okay, good.
But what I am saying, hedge means that hedge should be like morally, spiritually,
Okay.
and physically. That hedge should be there. That means proper border openings and proper screening. And you had to know who is coming in, who is going out.
How do you increase border security on the largest unprotected border in the world and balance a budget at the same time?
Or we have seen recently there are a lot of people walking through our borders,
Okay.
and the government is not putting any restriction on that one.
Well, they're sending a lot of them back.
But how many of them are going back?
The-
Once this Canadian system, once they are in, it is very, very hard to send them back.
I don't know if that's true. There's certainly a process that has to be followed, but my understanding is something like 90% of the legal border crossers that have come into Canada over the last several years have either been sent back or are in the process of being sent back.
What I understand that recently through the news media, everything that what I have seen, there are hundreds and thousands walking through.
Hundreds and thousands.
Oh yeah, there are lots of them walking through these borders.
Okay, but
On bare feet, and
you don't believe that we're sending them back?
No, I'm not saying to send them back, but a proper arrangements must be made there. Who is coming in?
Okay.
Are they eligible to come into this country? Can we help them out? I believe in the refugee system and everything. I believe in proper immigration. I am also an immigrant, came into this country. I need this country to help everybody. I'm not really against that anyone should be turned back if that person is eligible to come and establish in this country. Canada is a nation of immigrants,
Okay.
and we all come here and peacefully living here.
Last
That's
one
one
on
issue.
the thing here, carbon taxes. So get rid of the carbon tax.
Yes, we don't agree with the carbon tax.
Why?
Canada doesn't need to impose that carbon tax on individuals.
Okay.
We had all these years that we moved without that carbon tax. So all of a sudden, that putting more and more burden on taxpayer, it's not a good idea. And
How do you respond when there are economists who say that the most effective way to change the kind of behavior that most scientists believe influences climate change is through a carbon tax?
There are so many ways that scientists these days saying putting more plants on the planet, and proper emission control. There's a lot of ways that a government has to have a proper scientist to study that one and properly manage that. If we don't do it properly now, stopping all the fire in the forests, and there are many ways that it could be controlled and it could be administered.
Okay. The only other questions that I wanted to talk about real quick is the Christian Heritage Party's stance on firearms. Restricted, unrestricted, everybody should be able to carry a gun, open carry. Where do you stand?
Personally, what I believe, that there are a lot of things that we could talk about carrying a gun, or number one thing, personally, I believe that why an individual need an automatic gun.
Okay. I agree.
Why
Preaching
an
to the
individual?
choir on that one, Pastor.
Yeah, you want to kill 500 animals at a time?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
See, first of all, they have to stop that. Automatic rifles or anything should not be in individuals' hands,
Okay.
except in the army.
Okay. So you would advocate for no military-style weapons? in the
No
public?
military-style weapons in people's hand.
Excellent. The last question that I have for you is about education. What is education is historically a provincial area of government, but does the Christian Heritage Party have any particular stance on education topics that should or shouldn't be taught in education, anything like that?
Education is the basic of any nation. Without education, that the nation can never develop.
Okay.
And as you were mentioning before, that every area, according to the population, they should have proper schools. And it is not the government, not only the government is the one to control on that area.
Okay.
The residents of that area should have influence in it.
Okay.
Just like how you teach your children. I believe parents have a lot in it, not just the government say, this is the way that you should teach your children.
Okay.
This is the way that your school should be. But I believe that the residents of every areas, as well as government together,
Okay.
we work together on that area.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so
to sit and
much.
chat with us. I think
Okay.
that I might have made somebody angry with some of my questions. So we'll end things there.
I'm a
'cause
little bit
it's
shivering.
raining down and it's getting a little bit cold. But thank you
Okay.
again so
Thank
much for
you.
taking the time.
God bless.
I appreciate it. You have a good day.
You too.